Alicia Andrews, the girl they got locked up for Foolio's murder, told the police everything, and I mean everything. We talking about who paid for the hit, how much money changed hands, and why Yungeen Ace might be the real mastermind behind this whole operation. And now she's just realizing that she dug her own grave because now it's all being used against her in court. Y'all thought this case was just about some young girl caught up in street politics? Nah, fam. This goes way deeper than that. According to my sources close to the investigation, Andrew's been singing like a canary in that interrogation room, and the information she's giving up is about to flip this whole case upside down. I'm talking about recorded statements, wire transfers, text messages, and phone calls that connect this murder directly to one of Jacksonville's biggest rap stars. But here's where it gets crazy. The more she talks, the more it seems like she might be lying to save her own skin. Let me break this whole situation down for you because what's happening behind closed doors is wilder than anything y'all seen on social media. Foundation building, the real power structure. To understand how we got here, we need to talk about the real power structure in Jacksonville and who really had the money and motivation to take out Foolio. See, everybody been focusing on the street level beef between ATK and 6 Block, but the real money and power in this situation comes from a completely different level. Yungeen Ace ain't just some rapper from the hood no more. This man got major label deals, publishing money, touring revenue, and business investments that put him in a completely different tax bracket than the average street dude. We talking about someone with access to serious money and the connections to make things happen without getting his hands dirty. But here's what people don't understand about Ace. He's smart as hell when it comes to business and staying out of legal trouble. This man been through the system, lost homies to violence, and learned how to move different. So the idea that he would directly order a hit and leave evidence behind don't make sense with his track record. However, according to what Andrews allegedly told the police, Ace didn't order the hit directly. Instead, he put up money as a bounty, letting it be known that anyone who took care of the Foolio problem would be compensated handsomely. That's a completely different level of criminal sophistication that's much harder to prove in court. The escalation, the bounty system. Now here's where Andrew's story gets really interesting, and this is where she allegedly started giving up details that could change everything. According to sources close to the investigation, Andrews told police that there was a bounty system in place for taking out high-profile targets in the Jacksonville beef. She claimed that Ace had put up $50,000 for anyone who could eliminate Foolio, but he did it through intermediaries so there would be no direct connection back to him. The money was supposedly held by trusted associates who would pay out once the job was confirmed done. But here's where her story starts falling apart. Andrews claimed she was promised $10,000 for her role in the operation, but she never received any money. She said she was told the payment would come after everything cooled down, but when she got arrested, nobody came to help her with bail or legal fees. This is classic snitch behavior, fam. When the money don't come through and you're facing life in prison, suddenly you remember all kinds of details about who was really behind everything. But the question is she telling the truth or is she making up stories to get a better deal from prosecutors? The turning point, the interrogation tapes. What happened next is where this story gets really wild. According to my sources, the FBI and Tampa PD have hours of recorded interrogations with Andrews where she breaks down the entire operation from start to finish. And let me tell you, if even half of what she's saying is true, this case is about to get a lot bigger. Andrews allegedly told investigators that the hit was planned weeks in advance, with multiple people involved in surveillance, logistics, and execution. She claimed that Isaiah Chance, her boyfriend at the time, was the main coordinator, but he was taking orders from higher-ups in the ATK organization. She said the plan was to wait for Foolio to be vulnerable, preferably outside of Jacksonville where he had less protection. When they found out about his birthday trip to Tampa, that became the perfect opportunity to strike. But here's the most damaging part of her alleged confession. She claimed to have recordings of phone calls and text messages that prove Ace's involvement in financing the operation. If these recordings exist and they're authentic, that's game over for Ace's career and possibly his freedom. The investigation, following the money. Now here's where the FBI started getting really interested in this case. Money laundering and racketeering are federal crimes, and if they can prove that Ace used his legitimate music income to finance criminal activities, they can seize all his assets under RICO statutes. According to Andrews' alleged statements, the money for the hit came through a complex network of cash transactions, cryptocurrency transfers, and business payments designed to hide the true source and purpose of the funds. This level of financial sophistication suggests someone with serious resources and knowledge of how to move money without detection. The FBI brought in financial crimes specialists to trace these transactions, and what they allegedly found was a pattern of payments that coincided with escalations in the Jacksonville beef. Every time someone from 6 Block got killed or attacked, there were corresponding financial movements in accounts connected to ATK associates. But here's where it gets complicated. Proving that these financial transactions were payments for criminal activities is extremely difficult. Defense lawyers can argue that these were legitimate business expenses, loans between friends, or payments for legal services like music production or promotion. The arrests building a RICO case. The reason the feds decided to charge this as a RICO case becomes clearer when you understand what Andrews allegedly told them about the organizational structure behind the hit. She didn't just implicate individual shooters. She described an entire criminal enterprise with Ace at the top, coordinators in the middle, and shooters at the bottom. According to her alleged statements, ATK operates like a business with different people handling different aspects of their criminal activities. Some people handle the music and legitimate businesses, others handle the street operations, and a few trusted individuals handle the money and coordination between the two sides. This type of organizational structure is exactly what RICO was designed to target. Ongoing criminal enterprises that use legitimate businesses to hide their illegal activities. If the feds can prove this structure exists and that Ace was at the top of it, they can charge him as the leader of a criminal organization. But here's the problem with Andrews' story. She was supposedly just a girlfriend who got caught up in the situation. How would she have detailed knowledge of the organizational structure and financial operations of a criminal enterprise? Either she's lying to make her information seem more valuable, or she was much more involved than she initially claimed. The evidence, what she allegedly gave up. Let me break down what Andrews allegedly told the police, because if this information is accurate, it's about to destroy a lot of people's lives. First, she claimed to have recordings of phone calls between Isaiah Chance and higher-ups in ATK discussing the Foolio situation and the bounty that was available. Second, she allegedly provided bank account information and transaction records showing payments that she claimed were connected to the hit. These weren't direct payments to the shooters, but rather payments to intermediaries who then distributed the money to the people involved in the operation. Third, she gave up names, dates, and locations of meetings where the hit was allegedly planned and coordinated. She claimed to have been present at some of these meetings, which would make her a direct witness to conspiracy charges. But here's what's really interesting. She also allegedly told police about other unsolved murders and attacks in Jacksonville that she claimed were connected to the same bounty system. If she's telling the truth, this case could blow open years of unsolved violence in the city. The social media evidence, digital breadcrumbs. One of the most damaging aspects of Andrews' alleged confession involves social media evidence that she helped investigators interpret. She claimed that certain posts, lyrics, and interactions on social media were actually coded communications about criminal activities. For example, she allegedly told police that when Ace posted certain lyrics or made certain references in his music, it was actually communicating messages to people involved in street operations. She claimed to know the code because Isaiah Chance had explained it to her. She also allegedly provided information about how the ATK organization used social media to coordinate activities, share information, and even issue threats to rivals. This type of digital evidence is extremely valuable to prosecutors because it creates a paper trail that's hard to deny. But here's the problem. Interpreting social media posts and rap lyrics as evidence of criminal activity is controversial and often gets thrown out of court. Defense lawyers can argue that this is just artistic expression or normal social media behavior, not evidence of criminal conspiracy. The wire transfers following the digital money. According to Andrews' alleged statements, the most damaging evidence involves electronic financial transactions that she helped investigators trace. She claimed that Ace used a network of associates and business entities to move money for criminal purposes while maintaining plausible deniability. The system allegedly worked like this. Ace would make legitimate business payments to associates for things like music production, promotion, or other services. These associates would then use that money to fund criminal activities, including the bounty payments for hits on rival gang members. Andrews allegedly provided account numbers, transaction dates, and the names of people involved in these financial networks. If this information is accurate and the FBI can verify it, that's the type of evidence that can bring down entire criminal organizations. But here's where her credibility becomes questionable. How would a young girl with no criminal background have detailed knowledge of complex money laundering operations? Either she's much smarter and more involved than anyone realized, or she's making up sophisticated sounding stories to impress investigators. The coordination meetings, planning the hit. One of the most explosive parts of Andrews' alleged confession involves her claims about planning meetings for the Foolio hit. She told investigators that she was present at multiple meetings where the operation was discussed and coordinated. According to her alleged statements, these meetings took place at various locations around Jacksonville, including recording studios, restaurants, and private homes. She claimed that Isaiah Chance brought her to these meetings because they were supposed to look like social gatherings, not criminal planning sessions. She allegedly provided specific details about who was present at these meetings, what was discussed, and what decisions were made. She claimed that the final decision to move forward with the Tampa hit was made at a meeting just days before Foolio's birthday. But here's what doesn't make sense. If these were high-level criminal planning meetings, why would they bring along a girlfriend with no criminal experience? Either Andrews is lying about being present at these meetings, or the people involved were incredibly sloppy about operational security. The payment structure, how the money flowed. Andrews allegedly gave investigators detailed information about how payments were structured for the Foolio hit. According to her statements, the money didn't flow directly from Ace to the shooters. It went through multiple intermediaries to create distance and plausible deniability. She claimed that Ace provided money to trusted lieutenants, who then distributed it to coordinators like Isaiah Chance, who then paid the actual shooters and support personnel. Each level of the organization took a cut, so the shooters received less money than what Ace originally put up. Andrews allegedly told police that she was promised $10,000 for her role, but Isaiah Chance was supposed to receive $25,000 for coordinating the operation. The actual shooters were allegedly promised $15,000 each, with bonuses if they could make it look like a robbery or random violence. But here's the problem with this story. The math doesn't add up. If Ace put up $50,000 and all these people were supposed to get paid the amounts Andrews claimed, the total would be way more than $50,000. Either she's lying about the amounts or there were additional funding sources she didn't know about. The aftermath, why she's talking now. The reason Andrews is allegedly cooperating with investigators becomes clear when you understand her legal situation. She's facing life in prison without parole if convicted of first-degree murder. Her only hope of avoiding that sentence is to provide substantial assistance to the government in prosecuting bigger targets. But here's where it gets interesting. Andrews' cooperation might not be as voluntary as it seems. According to sources close to the case, investigators used psychological pressure tactics to get her to talk, including threats about what would happen to her in prison and promises about witness protection programs. They also allegedly told her that other co-defendants were already cooperating and blaming everything on her. This type of psychological manipulation is designed to create panic and get suspects to start talking before they have time to think through the consequences. The problem is that statements obtained through coercion or deception often get thrown out of court. If Andrews' lawyers can prove that investigators used improper tactics to get her to confess, all of her statements could be ruled inadmissible. The credibility problems, why she might be lying. Here's where Andrews' story starts falling apart under scrutiny. First, her level of detailed knowledge about criminal operations doesn't match her background or experience. She's claiming to know things that would typically only be known by high-level participants in criminal organizations. Second, some of the details she's providing don't match with other evidence in the case. For example, she claimed to be present at certain meetings on dates when phone records show she was in different locations. These types of inconsistencies destroy witness credibility. Third, her motivation to lie is obvious. She's facing life in prison and will say anything to get a better deal. Prosecutors love cooperating witnesses, but juries are often skeptical of people who are clearly trying to save themselves by blaming others. The defense is gonna tear her apart on cross-examination. They're gonna show that she's changed her story multiple times, that she has obvious motivations to lie, and that many of her claims can't be verified through independent evidence. The Yungeen Ace angle, why it might not be him. Now let's talk about why Yungeen Ace might not be behind this hit, despite what Andrews is allegedly claiming. First, Ace has been extremely careful about staying out of legal trouble since his early cases. He's built a legitimate music career and has too much to lose by getting involved in street activities. Second, the timing doesn't make sense. Ace was focused on his music career and had been distancing himself from street politics. Getting involved in a high-profile murder would jeopardize everything he had worked to build. Third, Ace had other ways to handle the Foolio situation that didn't involve violence. He was winning the rap battle, his career was taking off, and Foolio's relevance was declining. Why risk everything on a murder when time and success were already solving the problem? The more likely scenario is that lower-level people in ATK took it upon themselves to handle the Foolio situation, possibly hoping to impress Ace or gain status within the organization. Andrews might be trying to implicate Ace because she knows that's what prosecutors want to hear. The federal strategy, flipping the pyramid. The reason the feds are so interested in Andrews' allegations about Ace becomes clear when you understand their strategy. They're not just trying to solve one murder. They're trying to dismantle what they see as an ongoing criminal enterprise. By starting with lower-level defendants like Andrews and working their way up the organizational pyramid, they hope to eventually reach the people at the top who they believe are financing and directing criminal activities. This is the same strategy they used against organized crime families. But this strategy only works if the people at the bottom actually have reliable information about the people at the top. If Andrews is making up stories about Ace's involvement, the whole strategy falls apart and innocent people get railroaded. The defense response, attacking the snitch. Ace's legal team is already preparing to attack Andrews' credibility if she tries to testify against him. They're going to show that she's a desperate woman facing life in prison who will say anything to get a better deal from prosecutors. They're also going to point out that she initially denied knowing anything about the murder, then gradually started remembering more details as prosecutors offered her better deals. This pattern of evolving stories is classic behavior for unreliable witnesses. Most importantly, they're going to demand to see all the evidence Andrews claims to have provided, the recordings, the financial records, the text messages. If this evidence doesn't exist or doesn't support her claims, her entire story falls apart. The bigger picture, destroying Black success. Here's what really bothers me about this whole situation. The feds are using a desperate woman's uncorroborated allegations to try to destroy one of the most successful young Black entrepreneurs in the music industry. Ace built his career from nothing, overcame incredible obstacles, and became a legitimate businessman. Now they want to tear all that down based on the word of someone who's facing life in prison and has every reason to lie. This is the same playbook they used against other successful Black men in hip-hop. Find someone desperate enough to make accusations and use that to justify destroying everything they built. Even if Ace is completely innocent, the allegations alone could destroy his career, his business relationships, and his freedom. That's the real power of the federal system. They can ruin your life even if they never convict you of anything. The inevitable outcome, truth versus desperation. Here's the bottom line, fam. Andrews' allegations against Ace are probably bullshit designed to get her a better deal from prosecutors. She's facing life in prison and will say anything to avoid that fate, including making up elaborate stories about criminal organizations and bounty systems. The feds want to believe her because taking down a successful rapper would be a huge win for their careers. But wanting something to be true doesn't make it true, and desperate people make unreliable witnesses. When this case goes to trial, Andrews' credibility is going to get destroyed on cross-examination. Her story has too many holes, too many inconsistencies, and too many obvious motivations for lying. No reasonable jury is going to convict someone based solely on her testimony. But the damage to Ace's reputation might already be done. Even if he's never charged or convicted of anything, the allegations alone could follow him for the rest of his career. That's the real tragedy here. The federal system being used to destroy Black success based on the lies of desperate people. Conclusion, the real victims. The real victims in this situation aren't just Foolio and his family. They're also the innocent people whose lives are being destroyed by false allegations and prosecutorial overreach. Andrews is trying to save herself by destroying others, and the feds are happy to help because it advances their careers. This case shows everything that's wrong with the federal justice system, how they use desperate people as weapons against successful black men, how they build cases on lies and speculation, and how they destroy lives even when they can't prove guilt. Y'all need to pay attention to what's happening here, because this could happen to any successful black person who came from the streets. The feds will find someone desperate enough to make accusations, and then use those accusations to justify tearing down everything you built. Alicia Andrews might think she's saving herself by snitching, but she's really just destroying her own credibility and helping the feds railroad innocent people. When this is all over, she's still gonna be facing serious time, but she'll also have to live with the fact that she tried to destroy innocent people to save herself. What y'all think about this situation? Do you believe Andrews' allegations against Ace, or do you think she's lying to get a better deal? Let me know in the comments, and make sure you subscribe, because this story is far from over. The truth always comes out eventually, and when it does, a lot of people are gonna have to answer for what they did to destroy innocent lives.